Okay, so for this part of the video, it is the heart itself. So take a look at the section D of your notes, which says heart. Okay, so for mammals, we have got a double circulatory system. Okay, so what it means by double circulatory is that we combine two circulations in one cycle itself. Okay, so two circulation in one cycles. So over here we have got the first one, okay, which is through the pulmonary arteries. Okay, so in the pulmonary arteries itself, it will be at very low pressure. At a lower pressure because we run it through via the lungs. Okay, that is for deoxygenated blood. Now, reoxygenated blood will enter back into the heart via the lungs, which is the pulmonary vein. Okay, now we all know that to a certain extent, artery is supposed to talk about Okay, we all know that the arteries usually talk about the away from the heart. Okay, but in this case, and usually is for oxygenated blood. Now, in this case, pulmonary arteries is carrying deoxygenated blood, whereas for your veins, the pulmonary veins are carrying your oxygenated blood. Okay, which is why it says reoxygenated here. Okay, now what are the advantages of my double circulatory system? Okay, so advantages, you have got that blood can be entering at different pressures. Okay, one is at high pressure to ensure that all the oxygenated blood is entering into the cells, okay, for the nutrients to reach the cells. The ones entering the lungs is at low pressure to ensure you have got sufficient time. Now, let's look at the next page, whereby you have got oxygenated blood and you have got deoxygenated blood. Okay, now for oxygenated blood themselves, you can see that the deoxygenated blood is depicted by the blue color. Okay, so over here, this is my deoxygenated blood, and my oxygenated blood is depicted by the red color here. Now we'll look at the left side first. Okay, so whatever, I'm sure when you're facing the screen now, your left side is where your deoxygenated blood comes in, and that is the right side of the heart. Okay, let me repeat. Your left hand is the right side of the heart that contains the deoxygenated blood. Okay, so when you go through the systems by themselves, okay, so let's look at the first one here. Okay, so the first point here, the deoxygenated blood will enter back into the heart via the Vena Cava. When you recall back the earlier page on your blood vessels here, okay, remember I spoke about the Vena Cava. Okay, you have got Vena Cava here, right? Okay, so from the deoxygenated blood through the veins will now re-enter back into the Vena Cava, which is what you see here. Okay, now from the Vena Cava, it will then enter into the top part of the chamber. Now both parts of the top chamber are called atrium. Okay, both sides. The bottoms are called the ventricle and ventricle. So the right side of the heart is called your right atrium. So you will enter into the right atrium, go down into your right ventricle, okay, and then after that, once the right ventricle pumps, it will squeeze the blood to your pulmonary arteries. Okay, now pulmonary arteries, they connect to the lungs. As the name suggests, pulmonary means lungs. Okay, anything to do with pulmonary has to be lungs. Okay, now you have got two main valves here. Okay, so what separates the right atrium, the top part, to the right ventricle, the bottom, is what you know as the tricuspid valve. Okay, now on the left side of the heart, which is your which is your right hand. Okay, your right hand, the left side of the heart, same thing. once blood from the right side has entered into your lungs, okay, it will go to your pulmonary artery, right? Now from your pulmonary artery, it will then enter into the lungs. Okay, so it will enter into the lungs itself, whereby you have got reoxygenation taking place. Okay, carbon dioxide leaves, oxygen enters back at your hemoglobin, the red blood cells. Okay, so once oxygenated blood is completed, it will then enter back into the left side of your heart. Okay, so from the lungs, it will enter into your left atrium. Okay, so same thing, when it enters into the left atrium, drops down to the left ventricle, the left ventricle muscles pump, it will pump upwards through your aortic arc here, okay, to the rest of the body. Now, your left atrium and left ventricle, same thing, okay, it is also separated by what we call the bicuspid valve. Okay, now your bicuspid, okay, along or your tricuspid can be collectively called your mitral valve. Okay, but you will still have to learn the difference between these. Okay, even though you can collectively call them as mitral valves, you will have to know the difference between these two and the reason behind it. Okay, now what separates your left ventricle to your aortic arc or your right ventricle to your pulmonary artery are your semilunar valves here. Okay, so semilunar valves are the ones that separate these ones. Okay, now let's look at the terminologies. So tricuspid and bicuspid valve, the second point here. Okay, so what it does is that it separates the atrium and the ventricle. Okay, why is it that your tricuspid valve on the right side is 3, but on the left side is only 2? Okay, think about the pressure. So on your right side, the deoxygenated blood coming back in, okay, it is at very high pressure from all parts of the body. On the left side, it is only from the lungs. Okay, so which is why the right side has 3 valves to withstand the pressure. Okay, so moving down at the heart, okay, you will notice over here, okay, notice your this section, okay, your muscular wall here, okay, will be thicker compared to the muscular wall over at the right. Okay, so because when you squeeze or you contract the left ventricle, the blood is being pumped to all parts of the body. Okay, so to all parts of the body compared to the right side, which is just to the lungs and therefore require lesser amount of force. Okay, now medium septum that you see here is the one that separates the left and right side of the heart. Okay, so some people, they are born with a hole at the medium septum, okay, which increases the risk of blood exchange between oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Okay, so such people, most of the time, they are unable to perform a variety of intense exercises depending on the severity of the hole in the heart. Okay, when there is exchange of your blood supply, okay, your deoxygenated and oxygenated blood, that will result in the individual having a decrease in oxygenated blood, okay, which will affect your respiration.